you for joining us today for our webinar on ClearStream RFID. I am your presenter, Joseph Kraebel. I'm a solutions architect here at PTS. And we're going to learn today how to set up in minutes and track anything in RFID with our ClearStream RFID product. So ClearStream RFID, it's for non-programmers or even programmers. It's a simple tool to allow you to quickly connect to a fixed RFID reader and start streaming in RFID tag data to the destination of your choice, such as an ODBC database, Microsoft Excel workbook, or even a text file, such as a CSV file. It's got a lot of powerful features, allowing you to control different readers and antennas, as well as antenna read strengths. We can also do general purpose input and output functionality, where you can trigger alarms and lights, as well as start a read based on a motion or light sensor. Today I'm going to be showing our ClearStream RFID 2.0 product, which was recently released earlier this year. We're very excited about this new product as we added support for other readers aside from our Motorola readers that were supported in version 1. We have some new scan interval options allowing you to do daily scans now. We also increased some of the read performance, so you can actually read more tags at once. And newly added for Motorola readers is a tag event option. So I'll go into that a little bit later when we actually do the demonstration. As I mentioned in the previous slide, our readers that we support are now not only Motorola, but we now support Impinj, Alien, ThingMagic, Intermec, and any reader that supports the LLRP protocol. So if your reader uses that protocol, you should be able to use it with our ClearStream RFID software. And the kits I'll get into a little bit later. I also wanted to mention before we start that you can request a trial of ClearStream. If you go to our ClearStream RFID website at clearstreamrfid.com, in the upper right, if you click the Request Free Trial, just fill out this form, and then I'll send an email over to our sales folks, and they'll be able to get a download out to you. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start our demonstration. Okay, so what you're looking at here is our ClearStream RFID product. So what I'm going to do is create a new project. So we'll show you how easy it is to start from scratch, basically to start reading tags in minutes. I'm going to create a new project, and then we're going to add a new profile. So you can actually define multiple profiles. So you can have a reader maybe that runs from 9 to 5. So maybe you want to run that in one profile. Then maybe you have a reader doing a totally different task, maybe at a dock door, checking things as they're coming in and out. And you can actually run that in a separate profile and actually run it differently, maybe in a continuous mode versus a daily 9 to 5 mode for the other profile. So once we add a profile, I'm going to go ahead and add a process. So this is basically a fixed reader. Each fixed reader you have would have a process tied to it. So our source is going to be RFID, because that's where we're going to be getting the data from, our fixed RFID reader. So the first thing we're going to do is select our reader type. So you'll see all of the different manufacturers here. If you don't see your manufacturer, you can choose the generic LLRP option. For this case, I'm going to choose Motorola, as that's the only readers that we have in the office here. Then you'll see an IP hostname field. If you happen to know the hostname or the IP address of your fixed reader, you can simply key that in here. If not, you can click this Find Readers button, and that'll open up another window to actually search your network for any fixed readers that it may find. You can actually choose the domain you want to search on. So if you have a network that has multiple domains, you can search across different domains. I'm going to search our local one here, and I'm just going to click Start. So what this is going to do is it's going to reach out all over your network, basically checking every IP address. So this may take a little while here. So while we're waiting for that to happen, once we actually find a reader, it's going to display the results in the window below here, and then you'll actually be able to expand on that to see more information about the reader itself. So we should come upon one pretty shortly here. Okay, there's our first reader. So it'll either show up as the host name or the IP address. This actually found it by host name, so if we actually expand that, you'll see its IP address, what port it's listening on, the reader model. So this is a Motorola FX7400. You'll see that we found another reader here below. If we look at this reader model, this is the Motorola FX9500. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that by highlighting it and then clicking Select. And then once I do that, it's going to populate our IP and host name as well as the reader ID. So now that I've defined our RFID as the source, now we need to configure where we want this RFID tag data to post to. So I'm going to come over to our destination. You'll see our options of ODBC, Excel, or text. I'm going to go to ODBC. And I'm going to go to our sample access database that is included with the ClearStream RFID product. I'll just bring that up. It's just a basic access database that's just going to collect tag info. We have a form here for viewing the different tags, and then we even have a tag report. So I'm going to select that. So I'm going to select our data source. So this will be any data source that is available in Windows. That should show up in this drop-down here. So I'm going to choose our ClearStream RFID sample. Once we select our data source, if you were using Oracle or SQL, this schema can be used, as well as the username and password if you have one on your database. So I'm going to go ahead and select the RFID tag list. So once we do that, you'll see that we have some mappings appear here below. So particular fields of data that we can actually capture from the RFID reader are the tag ID, the antenna that it was read by, the peak RSSI, which is basically a signal strength of the tag
46?
read.
No. Yeah.
One moment, please. Sorry about that. Okay. So we have a date time of the read,
On the ClearStream.
as well as the reader name. Hold on one moment, please. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so we have our date time, as I mentioned, as well as we can capture the reader name that actually read the tag. As I mentioned before, a new feature for our Motorola readers is a tag event. So this will actually capture different tag events based on the read state. So when the tag is first read, it can show up as new tag visible. If it comes out of visibility, we can actually mark it as tag no longer visible. And then once it comes back into visibility, it'll post an event of tag visible again. I'll go into that a little bit later when we talk about our advanced settings where we can actually customize those messages. So now that I have everything set up here, we also have an options tab where we can actually choose how we want to post the data to the database. So we can append, we can overwrite, we can update existing, or we can update existing, append if not found. So basically, if you want to keep track of when the tag was last read, you'll probably use the update existing option. If you just want to keep adding to the table as tags are read, you would use that append option. Overwrite would obviously overwrite the table with each read. And then delete existing is another option. It's kind of used for inventory purposes, or very rare cases, but one that a customer actually needed, so I'm not going to go too much into that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm just going to save it over our sample welcome here. And then if we come over to our data viewer, this is actually a view of our Access database. As you can see, we have no data in here currently. So I'm going to jump over to our start stop. And I'm going to hit this start button, then I'll go ahead and trigger our RFID read. Now you'll see some activity down here below. That just means that tags are filtering in. So if I come over to the data viewer, you'll see that in just that limited amount of time, I've read 159 tags. So we're still going. That's going to keep growing as we read because we're on the append option. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Then here's our final tag count. Now I'm going to go ahead and configure a few different options here to kind of show you how we can manipulate some of this data further. So if we look at this, you'll see it has an antenna name of 1 and then a reader name of fixed RFID. Now if you have multiple readers in place as well as multiple antennas on the reader, this probably wouldn't be that helpful to you. So now we give you the option to configure some of those antenna options. First off in our advanced area is our scanning mode. Currently I'm in continuous, so as soon as I hit start, it's just going to keep reading until I go ahead and hit that stop. We have timed options. One, you can do an interval where basically it'll run every so many seconds for a certain amount of time. So in this case, it would run every 60 seconds, and then it would read for actually 15 seconds. Once that's completed, it would wait another 60 and then repeat that process again. New to version 2 is this daily sync feature. So now you can actually set up to do reads basically from a Monday, Friday, 9 to 5 type scenario. So you don't have to keep this reader running while no one's in the office, to conserve electricity and actually prolong the life of the reader and the antennas. Our last scan mode is the GPI trigger. This will allow you to actually trigger the read to start based on a general purpose input. So if you connect a button or some sort of motion or light sensor, that can actually trigger the RFID read to take place. So once that's triggered, you can then set for how long you want that read to take place. So if someone's entering a dock door, or maybe even an office room with an item, right before they get to that door, you can have a motion sensor that'll trip that reader. Maybe you want it to read for 15 seconds, and then it'll shut off. We're going to stick with the continuous mode for this case. Our next section is antennas. So now we can actually add antennas to this area here and actually name them. So picture an RFID reader that has antennas in 2 different rooms or maybe on 2 different dock doors. So you could actually name this, dock door 1 for antenna 1, and then dock door 2 for antenna 2. I actually only have 1 antenna hooked up to this, so we're only going to see the dock door 1. But you can add up to 4 antennas on the FX7400 and then 8 antennas on the FX9500. You can also adjust the power levels of each individual antenna. So you can go to a max power of 30 or maybe set it a little lower if you don't want to read too far away from the actual antenna to get any other tags that may be in close range but not needing to be read by this antenna. We have our GPIO output section here, where you can actually add ports and alerts to actually trigger lights and alarms based on certain alerts, such as, tag inserted or database updated, or if something doesn't match or if something leaves the room that shouldn't, we can actually trigger an alarm or a light to go off, basically notifying the user that this item shouldn't be leaving this room. The last tab we have here in advanced is device. This is Motorola specific. These were the tag events that I was talking about earlier. You'll see that we have 3 different events. We have the new tag, the tag invisible, and back to visible. We have some default descriptions here that we'll actually post with the data. You can actually customize this to say what you would like it to, and then this will actually send with that tag data. You can also reboot the reader by entering the username and password from this screen. Okay, so we've named our antenna. One other thing we can name is the actual RFID reader. So you could use this in the case of maybe different office rooms or maybe different warehouses. So if you have multiple readers, you can actually name where that reader is. So maybe this is in warehouse A. So if you had another reader, maybe it was in warehouse B. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. So if we just look at our data here, once again, we have the antenna name of 1 and a reader name of fixed RFID. So now if I come over here and start that read again, so we'll pick up a few tags. We'll go ahead and hit stop. I'll go ahead and refresh this. And if we jump down here, so now our data is streaming over with that antenna name of Doctor 1, as well as our reader name of warehouse A. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add another reader to the mix. So I'm going to add another process here. Select RFID. Once again, it's Motorola. I do know the IP address, so I'm just going to punch it in instead of having to do the find readers. So once you punch in the IP address or host name, you'll see that the reader ID will appear if it's found. Once again, we'll go ahead to our ClearStream RFID sample database and our RFID tag list table. We'll go ahead and configure our mappings. So what I'm going to do here is actually an update existing append if not found based on the tag ID. So anytime a tag ID is read, if it's already in the database, it will go ahead and update that row with the date, time, the peak RSSI, as well as if it were read with a different antenna or reader. I'm going to go ahead and configure our advanced options for this reader. So maybe we'll name this one Doctor 2. And then we'll name this reader Warehouse B. I'm going to come back over to Process 1 and also change its update option or post type to update existing append if not found. And we're going to update on the tag ID. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to come over to our database here and clear out our tag list. Jump back over to our data viewer and refresh that. So now we have 0 records. And now I'm going to go ahead and start this process. So we're starting to read tags here. You'll see that both readers are now reading tags. If we jump over here, now we can see different types of data streaming in. We have our Doctor 2, Warehouse B, our Doctor 1, Warehouse A. As I expand this, if I keep refreshing this, you'll see some new tags being added, as well as some tags being updated as they're constantly being read. So this is actually a good way to keep track of inventory in a particular room. So if a picture, you're basically running this on an inventory in the room, and somebody leaves with inventory, this is where this tag event can come into play, where it can actually show you tag no longer visible. So that could actually be a custom message by you that could possibly say, replenish inventory or no longer in stock. So that's kind of a use case for that tag event scenario. I'm going to go ahead and stop our read. And we'll just do one last refresh. And as I mentioned before, we have different alerts for use with the general purpose outputs. So if I were to actually add an alert, you can name it. And then you'll see some different alert types you can add. A destination data insert versus a data update. So that means as we're adding data to the database, that will trigger that particular GPIO port that we set this alert to. A data update means it's updating a row instead of inserting it. A source data insert means the reader is actually reading tags, so that actually can flash a light as you're reading tags. Data update mode start and mode end. It's basically going to trigger when you start and stop a read. And then a destination data delete would be used if something in the destination were deleted. You can trigger something based on that. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. But other than that, that concludes my demonstration today.